torpağın evladıyam, torpağıma kurban olum, kurban olum he. Yaşıl düze könül verdim, karlı dağa kurban olum, kurban olum he. Eşkiyle min bir defa vatan üçün, o da düşse canım azdır, azdır, azdır. Azerbaycan diyen zaman getre getre alovlansam, güle güle yansam azdır, azdır, azdır.
In the calm of the mountain foots of Talish and Sabalan, in the midst of a vast green field, spreads the city of Ardabil, with mild summers and cold winters.
Kaymak kaymak tatlı dile, kurban olum, kurban olum hey.
Its history goes back to Firuz, one of Sassanid kings. In that period, it used to be called Ardabil, meaning the Holy Land. In ancient times, this city was in the way of the Silk Road, which leads us to believe that it has a 3,000-year civilization. Ardabil is inhabited by warm and welcoming people who speak the Azeri Turkish language. The population is mainly Muslim, with a Christian minority constituted by Armenians for the most. The Sheikh Safi Mausoleum, one of the precious monuments of Iran's history, is the home, the convent, and the tomb of Sheikh Safiuddin, the ancestor of the Safavid monarchs. This ensemble was constructed in the 8th century by Sadruddin Musa, Sheikh Safi's son. The ensemble of Sheikh Safi's mausoleum comprises 4 courtyards. The largest courtyard, or the Bahçe green courtyard, the large courtyard, around which the main buildings are situated, the small courtyard, which is in between the Bahçe and the large courtyard, and the south courtyard, which is called Shahid Gah, Martyr's Place. This valuable ensemble, which has been registered in UNESCO's World Heritage Records, includes other buildings, namely Sheikh Safi's tomb, King Ismail's tomb, the Jannat Sara Paradise House Mosque, the Haram, the China House, the Summer House, and a few other places. Sheikh Safiuddin of Ardabil, the grand ancestor of Safavid monarchs, was one of the respected native Sadats, descendants of the Prophet, of Ardabil. He was born between the years of 648 and 658 of the solar calendar and passed away in the year 745 when he was about 81 years old. King Ismail the Safavid is the founder of the Safavid dynasty. The outer facade beneath the dome is a brick cylinder about 70 meters high, with an octagon foundation that ends into a low-altitude dome in the shape of a semi-sphere. On the tower's facade, the word Allah has been artistically inscribed and repeated on topaz tiles. For this reason, they call it the Allah Allah Dome. The tomb's inner wall that leads to the dome are stucco decorated and covered by canvas drapes, which are painted upon with floral patterns in the style of the Safavid era and nailed to the walls. The Sheikh's grave in the middle of the octagon enclosure is covered with a wooden case with exquisite inlaid and fretwork on it, and on the upper edge of the case inscriptions have been engraved containing, among others, the name of the tomb's owner. Qandil Khane, stalactite house, which used to be called Namaz Khane, prayer house, used to be where the reading and interpretation sessions of the Quran took place. This part has two sections, each having a small dome as their roof. It has 2 stories with 5 wooden windows in each, bestowing a fascinating beauty to it. It has been said that King Tahmasp I, one of the famous Safavid rulers, ordered the weaving of an exquisite carpet having 33 million knots for the stalactite house. After being spread on the floor, the carpet's design was copied on the roof with gold. This carpet was taken to London by an Englishman named K. Abbott, and till this day, as the most exquisite carpet of the Safavid era, it is kept in the Victoria and Albert Hall Museum in London. The reason this section was called Stalactite House was the existence of lucid stalactites that passed a light to the entrance. In this part of the Stalactite House, a sign is attached which is said that King Ismail the Safavid used to hold it in his hands during one of his wars called the Chaldoran War. The northern and southern small domes of the hall, though made of plaster, are so artistically painted that they feel like a marvelous garden which absorbs the spectator's mind. The roof of the summer house, which is situated in front of the Sheikh's tomb, also ends into a smaller roof with ornamented gutter. The hall of the stalactite house has altogether 12 false arches, and the floor false arches are 30 centimeters high. The walls and the roofs of the false arcs, like the rest of the hall constituents, have stucco decorations and oil paintings. On the lower part of the walls, above the plinth, exists also stucco-worked inscriptions of Quran verses, legends, names of holy saints, and the Sheikh's pedigree of rules of life. The entrance of the main court is located on the eastern wall of the central corridor, with ornamented mogharnas, miniature concave arches worked on top of each other within a big concave arch on top of an entrance, coming downward from its tip. Over the end of the tile works, on an inscription we notice the name King Abbas, and it is for this reason that this entrance is called the Abbasi Portal. The Abbasi entrance opens into a rectangular courtyard covered with smooth and polished stone. It is known as the main court of the stalactite house. In the center of the courtyard is a shallow basin in the shape of a rose leaf, dug out of stone. The stalactite house reaches into another building in a totally asymmetrical way called the China House. One of the early buildings of the Sheikh Safi ensemble, this house was at first the place for religious rituals of the dervishes. Under the rule of King Abbas I, changes were implemented, and the house turned into a place for keeping precious books and antiques, in particular, royal china porcelains. The valuable china porcelains kept in this place were all ordered by King Abbas I to be manufactured by Chinese artists. Over each of them is a seal with the phrase, dedicated to the Sheikh Safi sanctuary by the servants of King Abbas and his successors. In the second round of the wars between Iran and Russia, 1826 and 1828, part of this treasure, on the orders of Garibidov, Russia's plenipotentiary minister, was taken to St. Petersburg. They exist right now in the Armitage Museum. Each portico is a pentagon with 5 deep pantries, having inlaid and fretwork doors. One of the sides has a window with a deep sill. In this edifice, on a false roof made of wood and plaster, several compartments on the wall, starting from 3 meters above the ground and reaching up to the roof, and arched depths are arranged where they keep precious objects. The front borders of these rafts are also made of wood, on which flower patterns with golden color on blue background have been drawn. On the northern rib of the court is a portico with a big juniper wooden door. On the north of this portico, which resembles a summer house, is another juniper door which opens to the Jannat Sarah, Paradise House, an octagon-shaped building. Some say that this building used to have a dome on top of it, and was a place where the dervish performed their Sama dance. Others have described it as a mosque without a roof. Whatever it was and still is, it's been close to 500 years that no one has ever come to the middle of this place, enthusing the honor of the endeared one to do the Sama, and the flow of time has become dust showing off on the rainbow. The precincts on the east and north of the China House is known as the Martyr's Place Graveyard. The Martyr's Place was at first a common graveyard in front of the sanctuary, but after the victory of King Ismail I over Farrukh Yassar, the king of Shirvan, the bodies of Sheikh Haydar and his war commanders, who had been killed years ago in the Shirvan War and buried there, were transferred to this place. From then on, the graveyard was called Martyr's Place. What is known today as the Ardabil Anthropology Museum is actually one of the most ancient bathhouses of Iran, constructed by a person named Zahir al-Islam during the Ilkhani era between the years 654 and 750 in the lunar calendar. The building of the bathhouse, which is adjacent to the Sheikh Safi Mausoleum, is within the Ali Ghapu Square. The number of museum statues, which counts to around 30, and are wearing traditional clothing, the rituals and traditions of the people, and the means of subsistence of the ancient people of this region are all put on show. The House of Rezazadeh is named after a person by the same name who used to be one of the wealthiest and respected citizens of Ardabil. The house belongs to the late Qajar era and lies in the Ochadagan ancient precinct. It is a pleasant and luxurious house in 2 stories, with spacious guest houses and bright summer houses, which divulges the hospitality of its owner. The Amini family didn't suspect that years later, from the top of the minarets of the mosque they had built in their own time, would the spiritual tune of adhan, call to prayer, resound in the old neighborhoods of Ardabil. The Mirza Ali Akbar Mujtahid Mosque was at first built by the Amini family in the middle of the bazaar, the market. This building had been erected on a large number of columns. Years later, an individual who used to preach in this mosque did some reparations on it, and from then on, the mosque was named the Mirza Ali Akbar Mujtahid Mosque in his memory. The Ibrahimi House is a magnificent historical mansion with a luxurious court, beautiful orsis, buildings whose glass windows give onto the court, and artistic stucco decorations. It was built in the year 1340 on the lunar calendar. It is a wonderful edifice where the sunshine rays on the colorful glasses of the orsis carry away the contemplator into daydreaming. The Seven Springs Bridge of Ardabil is built over the Baliglochai River. The bridge has 7 brick passageways and breakwaters made with rocks. Two kilometers north of the city of Ardabil, in the Kalkhoran village, lies the tomb of Sheikh Aminuddin Jibrail, grand ancestor of the Safavid monarchs. In the privacy of Kalkhoran's sheikh, you're allowed only to be silent. That is because silence used to be the sheikh's creed, and he always abstained from giving speeches. It is for this reason that the guest in this house is confuted to remain silent. The mausoleum's structure was built in the 10th century in the lunar calendar. The Sheikh's tomb is located in a vast enclosure known as the Bagh-e-Sheikh, Sheikh's garden, in the shape of a square. It has a portico, porch, and an andaruni, an interior space composed of 2 small chambers. All surrounding walls inside the mausoleum are covered with tiles in all kinds of designs, and in the upper part one sees the inscription of verses and legends. The outer facade of the mausoleum on the east side of the structure has 3 doors, 4 windows, and 3 porticos, and a small false arch, which is absolutely symmetrical to the west side. And on the wall, the name of Allah, Muhammad, and Ali have been inscribed on topaz-colored tiles. This structure could be considered as one of the best examples of Islamic tombs. The vast green plains spreading below the mountain feet, the smooth stretch of mountainous green in the neighborhood of humid clouds and the breeze blowing over the cold snow, all these put together foster the heartbroken ashiqs. Ashiqs are mystique singers who play music and sing love songs. One of the greatest reasons for the shaping of civilization lies in the existence of rivers and lakes on the surface of the earth. The Ardabil is a beautiful lake worthy of being discovered. Shur means salty, and the lake used to have a salty water in the past, thus the name. Every year, thousands of birds migrate from the cold north to the warm south with the first signs of autumn. A large number of them are guests to the surroundings of Ardabil and spend the winter in the hope of spring. Honey is an electuary from the mountain foots of Sabalan and has been in existence just as long as the sweet nectar of flowers. The Sabalan honey, the sweetest souvenir of Ardabil, is produced from the slopes covered with wild hyacinth, sweet basil, pennyroyal, red thyme, and yellow flowers of Sabalan and Talish, a souvenir of which you will never forget the smell and taste. The beautiful city of Sarain is located 28 kilometers west of Ardabil, and one of its main attractions is a place called the Rafisuye Hot Mineral Spring. They say that in the past the city of Sarain was in the way of the Silk Road, and for the travelers of this commercial road, a coffee house had been built with a number of rooms. The mineral spring came out of the earth inside the coffee house, and gradually the coffee house was named Rafisuye, which at present still hosts the travelers. Cheshme Sardabe, the Sardabe Spring, is located at 25 kilometers northwest of the city of Ardabil in the village of Sardabe. In the Sardabe region is also a waterfall by the same name, which is 15 to 20 meters high, having an exclusive beauty. There's also the Sardabe hot spring water, which has healing properties. Every year, it hosts thousands of native and foreign tourists. The existence of a waterfall, which is frozen most of the year, beside a hot water spring that boils out of the earth, is a marvelous parade of the power of the Almighty. At 25 kilometers from the Sabalan Mountains lies the city of Meshkin Shahr, a city with a pleasant climate, people of understanding, and a rich culture. An ancient city which has been home to many of the distinguished and eminent figures of the country. With due attention to the relics discovered from the city's historical surroundings, it's been estimated to be more than 10,000 years old. That's 8,000 years before Christ. The historical region known as Yara lies in the northwest of the Piraz Mian village and 31 kilometers east of Meshkin Shahr. The city of Yara has three main attractions, namely the military fort, the sanctuary, and Gusha Tepe, the Gusha Hill. The fort and the sanctuary date back to 1450 before Christ, and Gusha Tepe dates back to 7,000 years before Christ. In the nearby neighborhood, there are gravestones with monotonous patterns of human faces that are mouthless. They vary in size between 2 meters and 40 centimeters, and they count to around 100. This place is situated at the extremity of the Meshkin Shahr plain. Kohne Qal'eh, the Old Fort, is the name of a historical fort in the vicinity of Meshkin Shahr. About 150 meters away from the fort is the famous petroglyph of Soroshakan Dashi. On this petroglyph, with Pahlavi script, is written about a person named Nurse Hormuz, a Sassanid king on whose order this structure was built within 6 years in the Khiav region. At some point, this fort used to be the lifeline of the warriors who entrenched in Sabalan. This fort has always been in control of the army and garrisons. Kohne Qal'eh has a very large court with 4 brick walls built on a base of rock. It has 6 towers with small crypt-like chambers designed for stalling a rider and his horse. The Fandoglu forest starts from the east of Olia Mausoleum, located on the road linking the city of Namin to the city of Astara, and ends in the east of the village of Hur, having a northwest-southwest orientation. The Fandoglu forest is part of the woods of the east of the Ardabil province, which are the continuation of the semi-tropical woods of the Gilan province. The forest's name comes from the fact that fandog, hazelnut trees, are most abundant in it. However, other fruit trees such as green gage, medlar, quince, and all kinds of berries grow in it. In the southmost regions of the Ardabil province, where the forest and the mountain meet, lies the beautiful city of Khalkhal, which is 114 kilometers away from the capital. The Hayran Pass is one of the routes connecting Ardabil to Astara. This pass has on one side the mountain covered with thick vegetation, and on the other side, a valley. Nature's beauty in this region fascinates any spectator. The road resembles a huge serpent that embraces the mountain and in the company of the Akhchai River and the beehives rises up to the summit. The city of Namin, which is near Khazar Sea, the Caspian Sea, spreads over the mountain foot and the lower fields. It is said this city used to be covered with trees and forests, and because of its vicinity to the sea, it had a humid and rainy weather, reasons why they called it Namin, meaning humid. Dasht-e Moran is the name of a green and fertile plain in the northernmost region of Ardabil province. The plain is so green, wet and virgin that it could host any kind of plant. This is why they called it the granary of Azerbaijan. In history books, we read that Nader Shah Afshar coronated himself in this region and chose it as his capital. The Nur Lake is the biggest sweetwater lake in Ardabil province. It is located in one of the valleys of the Baghru mountain, 48 kilometers southeast of Ardabil, in the direction of Khalkhal. It is composed of two lakes, a small one and a bigger one, which in the spring season join to form a single lake. Sheikh Haydar, a descendant of Sheikh Safi ad-Din Ardabili, is the father of King Ismail. From the book the king wrote himself in the Kufi script, we learn that in the thick of a fight, Sheikh Haydar is hit by an arrow and killed. Qazalbash soldiers wrapped his body in a winding sheet and buried him in the village of Esfandiar, in the Dehkandi region of Tabaristan. But later, King Ismail opened his grave and took his remains to somewhere around Khiav and buried him in a magnificent tomb. This tomb is the shape of a round tower upon which legends narrate that in the past it was covered with a golden dome. The structure was built in the early 8th century, and on the exterior it is ornamented in topaz tiles on which Quran verses from the Fath chapter and also the word Jalal Allah in various fonts including the Kufi are inscribed.